Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to JKWD Podcast. We hope you are having a great day. And actually, if you're not, this is probably a pretty good episode for you. It's also a good episode for you if you're having a great day. But yeah, anyway, we have Frank King, the mental health comedian, on. He's been in the news. Well, we're recording this on February 21, and you're hearing this a little later, but he's been in the news the last few days because he was um, on a ship uh, that it wasn't quarantined for coronavirus, but there were some cases on his ship, and there were some inaccurate news reports about the quarantine and saying he snuck off and whatever. So he's been dealing with some like craziness online from that. So we actually talk about that a little bit. If you want to see what that's about, you can just Google Frank King comedian and it will come up. The madness will show up for you. So it turned out this was a very timely chat for him. Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you very much. Doing well. We got sunshine here again.
Good.
It's cold, but we still have sunshine, so we
Same
don't
here.
know it's cold till I actually walk outside.
Same here, cold and
Well,
sunny.
except
Well,
for
I know it's cold because I can hear my heat going off, but
yeah.
it's
So yeah, life's pretty good. I'm in good spirits. It was a great podcast we just had here. I really didn't know what to expect. It was refreshing, actually, and enlightening. So
for
I
sure.
feel good.
So no ad today, but do want to read off the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There is hope. There are people you can talk to. 1-800-273-8255. It's 1-800-273-8255, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And on the other side of this, you will hear our conversation with Frank King.
Josh and Kelvin World Domination Podcast, where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go.
Yeah. So actually, we'll work this in from a from the bullying angle too, because that.
Oh my God!
Now that you can explain that to people.
You know who the thing that cyberbullying or bullying online needs to be explained to people my age, because when we were kids, you're in the locker room, they snap towels, they hit you in the shoulder, it's very personal, and nobody else knows about it. And I thought, how bad could it be? I mean, and the thing is, all the people that harshed on me online, and trust me, there were hundreds, I'll never see them. But if you're a teenager and you're being bullied by people in your class, you have to see them every day.
Right.
And everybody else who's read the posts. And I mean, I thought to myself, if I was in high school and this was happening, and these were people I knew, I'd just have to hand out numbers like the DMV for butt kickings, because all right, who's next? Yeah, I heard what you said about me. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, but now, I mean, that used to at least stop when you went home for the day. Now you have to
you get a break.
On Facebook and Snapchat and whatever else.
Yeah, and like I said, I had like I told you guys off here, I had changed my home phone number. I deactivated my personal Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I just kept my business stuff. I could disable my Google My Business because there's a map. I'm now going to have my attorney contact Yelp, because they won't take your business down from the directory. It doesn't have my address, but it has the city I live in. So I said, you need to take
not that big a city.
Yeah, not that big a city, and I'm not that hard to find. And I said, actually, when I shoot and kill somebody, I think their family's probably going to name you in the lawsuit. So I'm gonna have to call my attorney, open a file, and have to give so like, you need to send these guys a note saying you got to take that down. So because it's anyway, that's my week, fellas. How about you guys?
Yeah.
Well, I don't need to complain about the cold anymore.
No, I think Kelvin, yeah. That's
Holy, and I knew nothing about this until just moments
oh
ago.
man, Google my
Yeah,
name.
I didn't either.
Yeah, Google my name. Put Frank King comedy and coronavirus, and
Yeah, you don't even need to put coronavirus in there; it just pops right up.
yeah, and I've been in the Daily Mail on Lester Holt.
I think I googled comedian Frank King, and it just went woo.
Yeah, including Oregon Live,
Yeah. Yep.
which was one of my favorite interviews, by the way, because they let me tell my story. Let me straighten out the story. The ship was never quarantined. I was cleared by the CDC on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is people go, he sneaked. If you listen to the podcast and you don't know what we're talking about, there are these two cruise ships in the Western Pacific not that long ago, and on one of them called the Dream Princess Dream, they had hundreds of cases of the coronavirus. People were locked down. They were allowed to go out 1 hour a day into the sunshine like they were in triple max. Some of them are still in the hospital lockdown in Japan. And on our ship, we had no flu, none. And then we docked, and a woman who had been on the ship flew to Kuala Lumpur on her way home, spiked a fever, and that all of a sudden everybody's sort of stuck in place trying to. And I had I tested. I mean, the CDC guy in Cambodia said to me, Frank, look, you don't have a temperature. You haven't been to mainland China, which is the epicenter of this.
Right.
You gave us. I did a little test for the nose, Q-tip, throat Q-tips. So they had my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Said, no reason you can't go home. I said, okay, fine. So I bought my own plane tickets, $1,595. And then Seattle, of course, the CDC was waiting for me. I'm walking down the concourse in the customs immigration area, and the guy goes, Frank, looking forward to meeting you. They did the same thing. They examined me, and they said, no, you're fine, go. Well, the way the story is spun, it was a quarantine ship, and I snuck out of quarantine, and somehow I snuck out of Cambodia and snuck into the U.S., which doesn't usually happen in Seattle. It usually happens a lot farther south. And I said to somebody, I wish I had that set of skills that I could sneak out of Cambodia and sneak into the U.S. at will. Mm-hmm. So it's just been my town. You brought the virus back here. I love this. The guy, you brought the virus back here. You're trying to kill everybody. And I wrote back, no, I've got a list, and you're in the VIP section. Yeah.
Oh, Mo.
And our neighbors, and somebody, I gave up comedy clubs long ago, but we're going to make sure you never get booked in another comedy club again. And I wrote back, can we get that in writing? Because I don't do comedy clubs. They don't pay anything. So anyway, right. It's just been a week, fellas.
Yeah, I hear you. So why don't you just take a second to introduce you and yourself and your mission? Tell us a little bit about why that's your mission and how you might actually be uniquely qualified to handle this. There are so many people who like wouldn't be here.
Yes, exactly.
A few days later, and would have just been like, not only not here, but they'd be struggling a lot more than clearly you are.
Yeah, I am a suicide prevention speaker. I speak on suicide prevention, signs and symptoms of depression, thoughts of suicide, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. That's how I make my living. And which, ironic in that people think I'm coming back to my county to kill people, or I'm on a plane with 300 people I'm going to kill. I said to somebody, my job is saving lives. And if I killed everybody on a 300-seat aircraft, that puts me pretty far into arrears for the year. It's going to take a while to make up that ground. Yeah, I go out and speak, and people always ask, and I always open with this. Wait a minute, a comedian talking about depression and suicide, how does that work? Well, it runs in my family. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. I won't give you the gory details, but my first TED Talk, if you go to YouTube, type in my name, and it's a matter of life or death. I talk about what happened, what happened in that incident, what happened at the scene. And then in 2010, after filing bankruptcy because my speaking business dropped off with the recession, I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Spoiler alert, I didn't pull the trigger, which usually gets a laugh. And then I say, a friend of mine never heard me do the keynote. And he came up afterwards and he said this, "Hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" And I said, "Hey, man, could you try to sound a little less disappointed?" Yeah, exactly. That's the funny and suicide prevention. So, and I think comedy, you know what a comedian's job is since the time of the court jester, speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless. Well, I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those often powerless in its grip. And when I speak, oftentimes, well, almost every time, I do a little Q&A. I don't feel bad. I got 3 dogs. I do a general Q&A, and I tell the audience, we're gonna do a Q&A all together, and then if you have a question you don't want to ask in front of everybody, like, "Hey, I'm crazy, can you help me?" I'll hang out afterwards, and usually there's 1 to half a dozen people hang out, and oftentimes they have I have 2 mental illnesses. One's called major depressive disorder, depression. The other one's called more rare, called chronic suicidal ideation. It means for me and people like me, my tribe, suicide's always an option on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. I'll give you an idea how small. A couple of years ago, my car broke down. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I'd kill myself. So when I say that on stage, almost every time somebody who comes up, they've got that chronic suicidal ideation. They had no idea it had a name. They thought they were just some kind of freak. They were all alone, and the relief to find out it is a thing and it has a name and they're not by themselves is palpable. So I mean, it's conceivable, arguable, that maybe I've taken them just far enough off the path to suicide, they'll live a relatively normal life. And it hit me not long ago. I was someplace standing outside thinking about all these people that came up afterwards. Oh my God, I'm George Bailey, and it's a wonderful life. I've been shown what these people's lives would be like if I weren't here to speak and let them know they're not alone. My second thought was, oh my God, now I can't kill myself because I'd take all these people with me.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, a friend of mine said, "You couldn't live with that?" I said, "No, dude, I couldn't die with that." So that's what I do, and that's why I'm qualified to do it, because it runs in my family, because I've been that close. When I stand on stage and say I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like, every mentally ill person in the audience is nodding. Oh man, he understands it. He gets it. Because it's one thing to be a clinician and understand it from a clinical perspective.
Right.
But if you know the aftertaste of gun oil, it's a whole different.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm guessing you have children? I don't know.
Yeah. Got a sick 14-month-old
brother.
and a 5-month-old puppy. So.
Oh, good call.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 14-month-old wasn't enough for you? Honey, this is just not disruptive enough. I need something else that whines.
Yeah, she's going to, well, hopefully we'll have the baby in daycare at some point.
That's
soon.
fine. I love kids.
But yeah,
Hey,
she's been a regular on this podcast for the last year. So
here's how I feel about kids and that noise. If they're making that noise, they're breathing. That's all I care about. That's all.
And she'll make it for 5 minutes, and then she'll either stop or I'll pick her up and I'll put her someplace else where she'll make the same noise because she doesn't know how to communicate what she wants. But I know she's not hungry, and I know she's got a clean diaper. Those are the 2 things I know. And
hey, oddly enough, that's a situation I'm in. I'm not hungry and I've got a clean diaper.
There you go.
I'm 63. That's a possibility, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, I guess it is.
Well, I mean, a possibility for all of us, right? I mean,
that's true.
You sit around for long enough, sometimes you just forget. You're like, how nice it is.
Oh yeah. Oh man. So that's why I speak on suicide prevention, because people ask me, how'd you pick that topic? Other speakers ask me, how'd you pick that topic? Well, the topic actually picked me.
So did you have you had to undergo any particular training? I mean, obviously having that brain is a key into other people's brains with the same thing. But have you had any particular training on how to
Yeah.
talk to people, or is this something you came up with?
Well, talking to people is not a problem, not an issue, because I've been a comedian since the
Right.
day after, day after Christmas, 1985. 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, no home on the road, doing stand up.
Wow.
Opened up for Seinfeld, Dennis Miller, Ellen, Rosie, Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Dana Carvey. The training I got was this thing called mental health first aid.
Hmm.
Your listeners should know that they're everywhere. It's an 8-hour class. They serve you lunch, and it costs anywhere from like nothing to $25. And it's a great primer. It's called mentalhealthfirstaid.com. And you can go on their website, put in your zip code, and put in like 25-mile radius, and you'll find every class within a 25-mile radius. And it's a great way to learn about a wide variety,
Oh wow.
from depression and suicide to non-lethal harm like cutting and burning and picking that kids do, and I'm sure adults do as well. That's one. I had a training called Working Minds. It's a training. The premise is suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. So it's kind of from an HR perspective.
Okay.
And then the third one is QPR. That's Queen. What's the P? What's the P in the Army? Like a whiskey Romeo. What's P? P. P is in Papa. Yeah. Q is in Queen. P is in Papa. R is in Romeo. Institute.com. QPRinstitute.com. They have what they call gatekeeper training, which is where you learn how to spot the signs and symptoms of depression, thoughts of suicide, and then what to do, what to say, what not to do, what not to say. Their thing is it's kind of like CPR in that the sooner you realize somebody's in a mental health crisis, and the sooner you can help get them stabilized,
Hmm.
the sooner you get them professional help, the better the outcome. It's kind of like a heart attack. The sooner you realize I'm having a heart attack, the sooner you start chest compressions, the sooner you get the AEDs and you give them the shock, and then sooner they have a better chance for long-term survival. And that's it's called gatekeeper training. You're the gatekeeper. You're standing at the gate watching people go by, and because people say to me all the time, so and so died by suicide. I had no idea, no signs. Well, here's the deal. People who are thinking about suicide, 8 out of 10 of them are ambivalent, and 90% of them give you hints, direct, indirect, verbal, behavioral, in the last week leading up to the attempt. So if you know what to look for,
Right.
and the suicide is the most preventable cause of death. Anybody can intervene. Anybody. Just by starting a conversation. Hey, dude, you just don't look. I know. No, I'm fine. No, I know you're not fine. Tell me what's up. So that's how it's. And if all else fails, are you having thoughts of suicide? The way you ask it.
Mhm.
It's a difficult question to ask, but if 8 out of 10 want somebody to interrupt, they may be delighted you asked.
Right.
So that's the training I've had.
Now, so I listen to a lot of comedians' podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask what seems like some inside baseball that I've gleaned, but it seems that mental health is a big issue for a lot of comics.
You think?
It's not a. I mean, it's an outside of it's an outside the normal job, and people the presentation is an hour. People see like an hour in that comedian's life.
Yeah.
And they're out there making people laugh and having a good time and appearing to have a good time, but that's not what's going on here. Probably. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into it and how you recognized it? I mean, I'm sure that at this point, we're recording in early 2020.
Mhm.
The Robin Williams' death is not too far behind us. Brody Stevens' death is not too far behind us. It's still, and those are guys who had guys around them.
Yeah, and everything to live for, as people say.
Right.
Like Robin Williams, he had money, and
right.
couple things. One, generally, if you have clinical depression or bipolar or whatever, it's the thoughts of suicide aren't necessarily situational. I've been most depressed at some of the best times in my life. That said, a situation can trigger it. And to your point about comedians, I think it's comedians, creative people, entrepreneurs. I have a podcast of my own. It's called the Suicide Prevention Punchline,
Oh, wow.
And we created it because there are so many comics who die by suicide. And so we thought we'd go on and talk about comics who die by suicide. We have clinicians on, we have comics on, we have people. We had a comic from Salt Lake City and his mom on, who's a therapist, which is one of our most downloaded podcasts. And we also have entrepreneurs on, because I did a TEDx called Mental with Benefits, the Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness. Because I noticed that people who are creative, whether it's comedy or music or art or entrepreneurs, they often had mental illness somewhere in their DNA. And I thought it can't be a coincidence that all these people have a mental illness. My premise was that the mental illness is simply half of the equation. There's a mental ableness, superpowers, if you will, that come with mental illness. And I said that to my sister, who lives with depression and anxiety. She goes, superpowers? We're not the X-Men. We're the Xanax Men. Exactly.
My goodness.
Yeah, and I put in the TEDx, I put laundry lists of people who had bipolar and dyslexia, and at the end I said, look, you don't have to have a mental illness to be rich and famous, but apparently it doesn't hurt.
Right.
And my fourth TED Talk was called Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking. Because of my chronic suicidal ideation, and I thought I was the only one who had it, of course. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, wonderful woman, but we don't belong together. We had nothing in common, but opposites attract. She was pregnant, I wasn't. She, thank you. I'll be here all week.
You need to warn me about those.
Yeah. Try the Zoloft. And I was selling insurance, which I didn't particularly like. Great business, but I didn't like it. And I wasn't going to open mic night, which is where I thought I belonged. I thought I belonged in comedy. And I realized I'm going to kill myself if I don't do something. I don't change something. And then my next thought was very empowering, which was, well, wait a minute. I'm going to kill myself anyway. I could divorce my wife, quit my job, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hell, I can still kill myself. And I thought I was the only one who thought that way. And then lo and behold, another comic called me one day and she goes, did I ever tell you the real reason I got into comedy, quit my job? I go, no. And she tells the same story. And then I met a gentleman, an entrepreneur, one of my clients I'm coaching to get a TEDx. When he looked over my stuff and he watched that TEDx, he called back and he goes, Frank, we have more in common than you think. In his previous job, and he was good at it, and he liked it, but he knew he should be doing something else. And he got suicidal in the first one. He thought, if I don't quit this job and try this, I'm going to kill myself. I go, man, I know that drill. When I write a book and I've got the title and subtitle and cover done, it's going to be starting the conversation on suicide, living in the exit row. And the cover on the front is going to be a guy sitting in the window seat on a plane in the exit row, because that's where I live. Always willing to, pop the door open if things get too bad. That's my superpower, and go. Which, by the way, is very empowering, because suicide, misconception. Why did he want to kill himself? Chances are he didn't want to kill himself. Chances are he just wanted to end the pain. And so I can go on oftentimes knowing I have a way to end the pain ultimately. If that makes sense. Ironically, my suicidal ideation keeps me alive.
Yeah, no, I get it. You get to. There's not hey doctor, I'm not quite sure what's wrong with me, but can we try A, B, C, or D? You what the
yeah.
you know what choice A is. You're good.
Yeah, the ultimate solution is yeah. And I take medication. I didn't take it for a long time. I didn't have anything against it. I just didn't. And I started taking it at age 60, and then 3 weeks into that, I'm like, what was I waiting for? Oh my God, this is what normal people feel like. Yeah. So
we're not sure. Normal.
Yeah. Well, normal.
That's a wide girth right there, right?
Yeah. Well, and people say, well, everybody has a little. Yeah, but not like. I said, you ever pull up? People go, everybody's a little crazy. I go, okay, let me ask you this. You ever pull up to an intersection where the train is coming, and the arms are coming down? You ever look at a train and think, if I pulled on the tracks, that would do it? They're like, what?
Nope, never had that thought.
Yeah, that's suicidal ideation right there.
Yeah.
But for people who have that, that's a very common thought.
Mm-hmm.
Driving a mountain road, there's a big drop off. They're looking, that would do it. Yeah, I got together with a friend of mine. We get together once a week for coffee, the Crazy Coffee Klatch, because that way we can take the game face off and just be ourselves and be really dark. And somebody had jumped off a building, like 6-story building that week, and killed themselves, and we both looked at each other like, 6? I'm not doing a 6-story building. You can survive that.
Yeah.
I'm going 10 at
60.
least.
Wow.
So, but when you say things like that to normal humans, they just stare at you in horror. And some of the funniest things happen with people who are, I call it, a meeting planner called me, would you do a keynote? Yes. I said, and she's well aware I put a gun in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I go, what do you want to talk about? She goes, just give me some bullet points. And I just let that hang in the air. And she comes on, she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Relax, Michelle. It's okay.
Well, now that we know who she is, no.
Yeah.
I probably had one. Every once in a while, I'll have something like just kind of flitter through my head, and I'm going like, don't be stupid, just cut the crap. The only time that I ever really had we'll call it an anxiety moment where I actually thought about suicide was several years ago. I went to, I had little shit. I had a house. I rented a house, and I was in the military, so I went someplace else, and I came back. Rented a house while I was gone. When I came back, I went to do my taxes and found out all this stuff about, depreciation and how it gets added to your stuff. And I've realized the tax bill I had to the IRS. And at the moment I saw that number, this thought came into my head. It was like, how do I get out of this? I'm thinking like this, which at the time was only about $10,000. So we're not talking like I owe the feds $500,000.
Yeah.
$10,000. And I was like, this incredible panic thing. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Well, strangely enough, my sister-in-law at the time had a credit card with a $10,000 limit that cured my problem. And I just had to worry about not pissing her off. Oops.
Yeah.
Did I do that, Jay? So, but that's the only time I really had that. So I've talked to people. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff on, talking to people who might be thinking about suicide. If you just say something, maybe you could have stopped that. But it's kind of a daunting thing from this side, because I think people like us may be worried about saying something that will actually push them forward.
Well, and let me address that. There's an urban legend that mentioning the S word in front of somebody who is depressed
Mm-hmm.
will encourage them to die by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I love the reason, because it'll give them the idea. I'm like, suicide? What a great idea! Why didn't I think of that? Trust me, it's crossed their mind. And your experience, Kelvin, is very common. It's a situational. You look at that number and you're like, oh man, how do you ever get out from under this? Well, I know. So most people have a time in their life, bankruptcy, divorce, or a big hit like that for taxes, where the thought crossed their mind. And some people with a divorce or bankruptcy, they need to take medication for 3, 4, 5, 6 months just to, take the edge off long enough to let them recover regain their balance, and then they come off. Then there's those of us who it's just organic. It's just part of the way we're wired. And the problem for men, by the way, and we have a book coming out March 1st. It's on men's mental health. I have two ladies I'm doing it with, a psychologist and a therapist. The therapist teaches suicide prevention to first responders, mostly men. And she went to the Barnes & Noble or Amazon to get a book on men's mental health, and nothing. So she thought, well, there's a vacuum in the market. So it's called Guts, Grit, and the Grind, a men's mental mechanical manual. And it's stories of guys and their problems and their solutions. Because guys tend to take advice from guys. That's how guys are. We're hoping that they'll see how another guy handled it. And also, we think a lot of women are going to buy it because they got a guy in their life who has a problem, and they're going to go through the index looking at that problem and think, oh man, this is how I can help him. Mm-hmm. Because men in this country right this minute, 8 out of 10 suicides are men. Mm-hmm. It's epidemic, especially men age 45 to 54, right there. A lot of blue collar guys used to have a great job. AI and robotics took it, and now they're adrift, and they've got the ego tied to their job. So that's why we came up with the Guts, Grit, and the Grind, and it's made it looks like a car manual, for like a new car manual. Mm. It's full of metaphors. For example, my favorite is this. So what if the man in your life had a check engine light? And it goes on, and he goes to see the mental mechanic, and the mental mechanic goes, Bob, no wonder you're depressed. You're a quart low on serotonin. I mean, that's in an effort to appeal to guys. Because I'll tell you, I have trouble taking advice. And if my wife could, I've said this many times, my wife could give me a Nobel Prize winning idea. And I would be like, yeah, poo poo. But if the mailman told me the same thing, I'm buying the plane tickets to go pick up the hardware. It's
I have so been there.
yeah, that's how. But and it's not just mental things with guys. Guys wait too long. If they've got a lump in their testicles, or they wait too long for a PSA test. For the prostate, or they tend to rationalize, or they got chest pains, but they're sure it's the burrito, not a heart attack. I've got a joke in my act that men don't die of heart attacks; they die of testosterone poisoning, because it can't be a heart attack. Yeah, well, guess what? It's a heart attack. So, yeah, it's that's the problem for men, is they're very unlikely. I will tell you this: there's several movements. One is a barbershop. It's a barbershop mental health movement. In that, and Kelvin, you can tell me if this is true. Barbershops have been kind of a safe place for African Americans in this country for a long time. They could go in and among guys and talk about things that mattered. Because why? Because the barber's not looking in the eye. He's you know what I mean? Because guys can't just sit at Starbucks, look each other in the eye, and talk about serious things. But if they're doing something else, and there's a movement that started in Australia. They found that if you had two guys under the hood of a car working and they're not looking at each other in the eye, they'll talk about anything. It's called the garage movement, or shed movement down there. And it's spread all over the world. It's now in Europe and the United States. Put two guys in a space like a garage doing woodwork or ironwork or working on a car, and not looking at each other. They'll talk about things, serious things that matter. It's just how guys are wired.
I am non-typical in all of those regards. Well, I am African American.
African American?
Yeah, I got that one.
Hey,
a little Indian in there somewhere. I think Cherokee.
Look at the video. I'm thinking that's an amazing impression.
And you have hair too, so.
Oh yeah, I do have hair. Yeah, and but I did spend 20 years in the military. Guys, my experience really has been that guys. I mean, it's rare when they actually discuss a problem.
Yeah.
But I can see where that would make sense, because really macho guys don't want to talk about things that aren't really macho, like eye to eye. So yeah.
That leads me to my next point, which is people always ask, who has the highest rate of suicide? What occupation? And it's construction. And they go, why construction? Well, because the guys you get in construction are, like you say, tough guys, hard as nails. So they're the kind of guys who don't talk about whatever problem it is, much less, I'm depressed. John, I'm depressed. Why are you? What are you, gay?
Yeah,
Why
back in the day, that would get you a lot of conversation that wasn't going to be make you feel good.
Yeah, well, in the military, it can be career limiting depending on where you are and who you're. I went down to the Lackland Air Force Base and spoke because the general, Mary O'Brien, the first female general at that base. She had lost an airman. They were going to have a court martial. The airman came to see her the night before, said, please drop the court martial. She said, I can't. And they open up the court martial, and the guy's not there. And they go to his room, and he's hanging. And so she's living with that. So she brought me in to start. Basically, I get hired to start the conversation, because if I stand up on stage, and say I'm crazy and my entire family has more nuts in it than a 25-pound bag of squirrel food, then it gives other people permission. Because if you see a guy being vulnerable on stage and bearing his soul, it tends to give other people permission to talk about their issues.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. As we started off talking about what bullying online looks like, and I'm having exactly the opposite experience over the last couple of years. I work from home at night, so a lot of guys have at least their coworkers around. I don't have that. I have the reason we got a puppy actually is it's been about 2 years since we lost our last dog, and I need someone to talk to at midnight when I'm up and working.
Yeah, that doesn't charge $4.99 a minute.
Right. But when my wife got pregnant, this is our first child. I was going to be 41 years old when she was born. Yeah, exactly. So um, outside of my parents, who do I have to, who do I really have to turn to?
Yeah.
Outside of my dad, and my dad was never, he's never really a talker. So I went searching online, and I found that there are some men's groups, um, closed Facebook groups that they ask a couple of questions, and you got to be serious about them.
Yeah.
They're not difficult to answer, but you can't make a joke. And then they let you in, and people ask anything from they want advice on anything from starting a new job to getting out of the military to how are you dealing with potty training to and all this. And when it gets bad, people still get on there and they're serious, and there are 95 comments every time somebody's having a bad day, and half of them are phone numbers saying, hey, give me a call.
Yeah, and that by the way, when I do my social media in my keynote, I talk about digital media addiction, social media, and it's a tool. It can be used for good or bad. In this case, in this case, it's good. You found your tribe, your community, and so you're not just posting how wonderful your life is. You're actually sharing your
Right.
issues. I've never changed a diaper. I'm a first time dad. Somebody help me with this. So
Yeah.
And
So,
and in your case, I needed to change the kid's diaper as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that happens.
How old is your wife, Sheer?
What's that?
How old is your wife?
She is now 35. She was 34.
Okay, so you're not that far apart in age.
No, we're 8 years apart. Her parents were 24 years apart.
Yeah, it amazes me when a guy married.
She lost her dad to hanging at 10.
Oh God! Oh Lord!
She wasn't the one who found him, but if she had gone to church, she would have been.
Oh boy!
Oh wow!
Yeah.
For whatever reason, her mom didn't send her to church with grandma that day.
That's a good thing, because if you're close to a suicide like that, it ups the chance at some point you will consider attempting. Hey, youngin'. I'm talking on a podcast where nobody can see what I'm talking about. There's a child. You have a child in your lap.
But our readers know she shows up, so we talk to her all the time.
But because she's not screaming, I don't recognize her. But yeah, I gotta tell you, the kid's got lungs.
You haven't even begun to see that yet.
And a goatee like yours. Sure is really odd.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, she's gonna get made fun of for that in school, so we'll take care of that before she gets there.
Yes. So how long have you been doing this now?
I've been doing comedy since '85, end of '85. I've been doing speaking, like corporate comedy, since '95, and I began speaking on suicide prevention with my first TED Talk, which is 2014, so 5 years in the suicide prevention market.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all I speak on. People go, what else should you talk about? That's it. Pretty much it. Well, because they're in speaking, the riches are in the niches.
Right.
And so you pick a niche, you pick a lane, and then I pick several occupations that are at risk, high at risk for suicide: dentists, doctors, veterinarians, and construction. Because A, they're high at risk, and B, all those industries are working hard to do something about it.
Right.
So
get the military in there. They have a really, really ridiculously high suicide rate.
Yeah, the Air Force, as a matter of fact, this year has a record. Last year by July, they had a record number. And the problem with the military, because people go, well, do you work for the military? I've done one, and I had to cut my price in half. If I was selling cruise missiles, they'd be writing me checks all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, mental health, my fee is $7,500 to $15,000 for a 45-minute keynote. And they're just like, what? Do you have any toilet seats we could buy for that? Oh, good for you! Good for you guys getting the old Navy reference.
Don't hurt me like that.
Yeah. So the military has not only veterans, of course, 21 or 22 a day, and then the active duties it's an issue. It's like I said, the Air Force had a record number by July.
Yeah.
And they had a 24-hour stand down, and And one Air Force general at some base, when they're doing the 24-hour stand down, said, suicide, if you do that, you're chicken poop. But he didn't say poop. And that's not helpful.
They're smart people sometimes, those guys with stories. So you go in for the show, well, it is a show, which starts a conversation. But what happens when you leave?
Well, what I hope happens is that, like when I was at Lackland, and I finished my show, and they all went to lunch. And I'm standing outside with the woman who booked me, and there are people coming out after lunch. And they said, Frank, it was amazing. Every table in there, people were talking about what you talked about and telling their own personal stories. Things that nobody knew about anybody else before you walked in.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job, is to give them permission to give voice to that, to say, because people have kind of a concept what mental illness looks like and sounds like. And I'm high functioning, which can be a problem because people go, you're not depressed. How do you know you're suicidal? Well, again, the aftertaste of gun oil was a big hint. Yeah. So, but that's what I hope happens. Simply gives people permission to say to other people, I have that issue. We know what Frank was talking about. I've got that, or my wife has that, or a guy came up to me, I think at that event, and he said, "Look, my wife, I believe she's been diagnosed bipolar. She's on her medication, and then she's off. She's on, she's off, and I don't really. I mean, I can deal with it. We have 2 kids, and she's short with the kids, and he goes, I'm at the point of having to tell her, look, you either need to get on medication and stay on medication, or we're going to have to get divorced because I'm not going to put the kids through this. So, or, military base again. My dad is 1,000 miles away, and he's saying things that scare me. Is this scary? Should I be paying attention? Oh yes. Problem is, what do you do 1,000 miles away? Yeah. I said, well, if you think he's suicidal, you call the police in his little town and you have them go by and do a safety check. And if they believe he's, going to hurt himself, they'll take him to the mental health facility for a 3-day all expenses paid vacation with no shoestrings or belt. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be pissed, but he's going to be alive. So.
Yeah. So part of my question was, I mean, you go in for that, but then the organizations who bring you in need to be prepared to handle what happens when you leave. So if all these people come up and they start, that part's not your job, I understand. All these people start realizing what they've been thinking and doing, and they want help now. So.
Oh, well, if it's a business, let's say, they probably have an employee assistance plan, EAP. Mm-hmm. So that they go to HR. And I tell them, look, go to HR. They've got an EAP. I'm sure they've got benefits, mental health benefits, and just find out what your benefits are. Will they provide mental health, like therapy? I'm sure you've got health insurance, medication, peer counseling. Mm-hmm. I also recommend several local nonprofits, NAMI, National Alliance Mental Illness, NAMI. They've got peer counseling, family-to-family counseling, classes if your child is schizophrenic. How do you deal with that? And the nice thing about NAMI, NAMI, is everything they do is free. So, and it's a great resource if you have somebody in your family, a loved one who has a mental illness. They'll help you realize you're not alone. Lots of families out there like that. So that's the, and then I usually send them a list of mental health services providers in the area, from I've got full insurance all the way down to a place that works on a sliding scale based on income. Mm-hmm. So that if they don't have any income, it's not going to cost them much to get the service.
Okay.
The problem is there's a shortage of mental health clinicians in this country, so it's hard to get an appointment. Even if you're really in distress. I mean, in the military, it's even worse. You hear stories about a guy who's gone off to war, come back, PTSD or whatever, and he said, nothing's worked, therapy, drugs, and he says, look, I need inpatient, I need a bed right now. Well, we got a 12-week wait on the beds. Mm-hmm. I think in the military, if you have an issue, medical, mental, or physical, you should be able to walk in and get it taken care of after your service. I mean, I think that should be the deal. We'll take care of you after you serve. And, oddly enough, it's not the guys who served overseas in Afghanistan or Iraq who have the majority of the problems. It's people, they may not have actually been deployed, but they have left the military.
Mm-hmm.
Very structured environment. You're in a community and a team that's got your back,
Mm-hmm.
and you're back in the civilian world, and you're looking for a job, and other employees at the job don't have your back necessarily like they do in the military. So that can be very stressful. So.
Yeah. Now, have you done any military time?
No. Comedian in the military. Bad combination.
Oh, I've had they didn't do it as a job, but it was, they had fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it's just, comedians have no respect for authority, and that's just if you want to look, if you want a great military comic, a guy named Blake Clark from Macon, Georgia. Blake Clark, Macon, Georgia. He was in boot camp, and the sergeant said, Clark, there are two kinds of men on the battlefield. What are they? This is during the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. I said, the poor and minorities, sir. Yeah. Of course, the answers are quick and the dead.
I know what the other answer was. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he said, next thing you know, I'm butt deep in a rice paddy in Vietnam with my M16 over my head. He goes, the Army's no place for a comedian. And he was a South Vietnamese, invited us to a barbecue, and I said, what kind of barbecue is that? And they said it's a goat. And I was the first goat I ever saw with a Frisbee in his mouth.
Yeah.
Blake Clark. I'll tell you, you know how you know Blake Clark? Ever seen the movie 50 First Dates?
I haven't seen
the movie. It's 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler. And she loses her memory every day. Every morning she wakes up, she can't remember anything from the day before.
Oh, okay.
Well, the guy who plays her dad in the movie is Blake Clark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got a lot of little, character parts here and there.
Right.
I was talking to a woman yesterday who was Vietnamese. She said, the odd thing about that period, Frank, the Vietnamese refugees came over after the war. Americans embraced the Vietnamese refugees, but they spit on the soldiers that were Americans. She goes, it's just odd that would, and that's going to be part of her TED Talk, I think, is that immigrant experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's bizarre.
Yeah,
we have some strange I don't know what you want to call them, ideas, priorities, senses of loyalty, whatever that is.
What was your branch of the military, Kelvin?
I was in the Air Force.
Okay, what was your AFSC?
I was communications. Well, initially I was a photographer, and then but I finished up in communications.
And people go, how do you know AFSC? Well, I played as a comic working the road. I played every officers club and whatever club in every base in the country.
Yeah.
So I was down in somewhere south where they have a Black Hawk base. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, I talked to the audience and I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "I'm a mechanic on a Black Hawk." I go, "Is that really useful?" I mean, by the time the pilot says we've got a problem and you say, "Where's that wrench?" You're a lawn dart. Why? I don't
really. Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, and I cut my teeth in San Diego at the comedy clubs there, which of course is a naval base and a sub base in MCRD where they recruits go, and so yeah, they're in the back of the room. Your tax dollars at work doing shots.
Yeah, my son was in the Navy for a while. My youngest son was in San Diego, so I don't know if you got to see you when he was out there, but
yeah, you never know because they came right regular. In the submariners, what do they call them? They have a name for like a nickname for the submariners. Anyway, you always knew when they were in town because at the beach, because you could hear it was like bacon frying on the beach because they've been underwater for 6 months. Is that bacon frying? Oh no, that's right. The sub's in. Yeah.
Oh, you're sick. I think
I am.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
So, fellas.
Well, it's kind of weird that we can make light of such a serious subject, but then that's kind of part of the therapy.
Yeah, you kind of need to, right?
Yeah.
That's how you take the weight off your shoulder.
And it's and you realize when I speak, you realize that it's more prevalent than you think it is, and whatever you have, a lot of other people have. And I make suggestions about medication. There's a DNA cheek swab for to test you for psychotropics, Meaning they take your DNA and let's say you're depressed, and they take your DNA and they put it up against this list of antidepressants, and they find the 2 or 3 they believe, based on your DNA, that will work best with your metabolism. So there's not so much experimentation. Go on, taper off, go on, taper off. Yeah, a couple $100 for the test. It's really simple, but it's a way of narrowing down the list, making it much easier especially when you first go on and doctors throwing meds at you, because that's what the drug rep told him worked really well.
Right.
I always tell people, look, ask your pharmacist, because he knows medications. Your doctor knows the drug salesman. He's got the samples in his trunk. He's probably selling it at Walmart out of there. You're laughing. I had a doctor who was doing that. He was selling samples out of his trunk.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Crestor, got a deal for you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, gentlemen, do we achieve our goals for the podcast? Did
we? Well, two kind of last question. Where do people start? I should say that the reason I wanted to have you on about 6 years ago. I wrote this blog post titled 6 Tips for Getting On with Your Miserable F in Life, and it was just meant for it was aimed at people who were complaining about being lazy and not getting off their couch. And it was stuff like eat more foods with oxytocin and get a plant to take care of. You just do something. Get your butt off the couch, take care of something, eat a banana instead of a pizza. And for a long time, most of this, it's always been on top of my most read stuff, but a lot of time it was people coming in actually looking for lovemaking tips. Right, because that's just how Google works. It sees and tips, and that's what people are searching for. But lately, for the first time in 6.5 years, it started getting searched. It's like, I'm so miserable and miserable life, and what do I do, and stuff like that. So, where do people start? Since my blog post about go walk a dog and grow a plant is really not. It's really not what was meant for. That's not who it was meant for.
Well, first thing I tell people is, look, if you're miserable, let's find out if it's organic. Just get evaluated. Just go and see a mental health professional and say, look, I'm just miserable. I'm never happy. Am I depressed? Is it clinical, or am I just miserable? So find out if it's something that is actually going on with your wiring, not just your situation. And then if it's your wiring and it's in fact a mental illness, then that's when I suggest doing the cheek swab and finding out which psychotropic works best with whatever you have. And miserable. I think that's probably that's where I tell people to start. See if you can't get them evaluated. No, no obligation. You don't have to go into a mental health facility. Just go and see if it's like a friend of mine has a sleep disorder. And she thought everybody took 2 naps a day until she went to see a sleep doctor and found out she had narcolepsy. She just thought that was the way everybody, and then she takes a drug for narcolepsy, and one day she goes, oh my God, is this what awake feels like? Yeah, because when I started taking the drugs at 60, 3 weeks in, I'm like, oh my God, why did I wait so long? So yeah, I would be evaluated if medication's indicated. And I believe in a holistic approach, kind of like yours. Eat a banana, get up off the couch, get a dog. I believe in medication, meditation, exercise, diet, good night's sleep. And I would tell you what the name of my latest podcast was. It's another thing I recommend you do. It begins with M. Do it regularly. Okay. But I'm afraid I don't want to offend anybody on your podcast. It's a TEDx talk, and it got me a standing ovation.
I think we have enough. Adults who understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's So if you look for my latest TEDx talk post, if you go to TEDx, type in Frank King and mental health, it'll come up, and it was very funny. But it's on it's an adult topic. Yeah. But it's part of a holistic approach, not because some people are just strictly pharmacological. Just give me a pill. And then, like you said, they're still eating pizza. They're still don't have anything to care for a plant and a dog. Because the nice thing about a dog is It gives you a reason. You have to get off the couch because the dog has to go outside.
Yeah, you're either gonna have to get off the couch. You're either gonna have to get out of the couch and clean the pee off the carpet, or you're gonna have to take them outside.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Which is that's a great suggestion, and you're also responsible for it. Same with a plant. Seinfeld used to have this bit about kids. Why not start with a monkey? See how you do with a monkey before you go ahead to full blown get pregnant and get a kid. And I've always thought that there should be places where you could timeshare children, like small, like babies, infant. You want to have a child, really? Okay. Well, we're going on vacation. You're going to be the nanny for this child for 2 weeks. It's a timeshare thing. See if you really want to have kids. And either at the end of 2 weeks, the person is just like, I'll never reproduce, or, oh man, this was so much fun. I can't wait to have one of my own. Because I would imagine
every time my brother comes, he's like, "Oh, okay, I got my dose of birth control for the next 6 months. See you in a while."
Exactly.
Yep.
Because how do you know, Sherry, till you have one? Then it's too late.
Yep.
Yeah, a friend of mine, a comic, Ralph Dirtbag Williams. Was it real men don't use birth control? They just pay child support for 18 years. Well, fellas, I've got another podcast here at the top of the hour.
All right.
Where can people find you online? Well, maybe now's not a good time to bring that up. So
yeah, pretty much today they can find me anywhere. thementalhealthcomedian.com is my website.
And that'll stay up throughout.
Oh, yeah. And my phone number's there, by the way, guys. I put my phone number on the screen when I keynote, because I tell people this: look, if you're suicidal, call the Lifeline. If you're mentally ill and just having a bad day, call a crazy person, because we get it. We're not going to judge. We're just going to listen. So, and my phone number's there, and I make that offer to anybody. Anytime I do a podcast, I go, look, if you're listening to a podcast right now and you're having a really bad day, and nobody who's neuronormal can understand, give me a call. Oh, and a guy gave me a call one time. He goes, man, this really is your cell phone number. I go, how cool would that be? And I said, I'll make it worse. Hold, please. And then the whole music would be another one bites the dust, then another one.
Oh, no. Crazy. All right.
Leave 'em on a laugh, man. Leave 'em on a laugh.
All right. Thanks so much for being here, Frank.
Yeah,
and we will see you around.
And let me know when it posts, because I'll post it on my social media, do a press release.
It'll come out in about 10 days, and because February only has 29 days this year, I can't do the math on that, but it'll be right around March 2nd or whatever that Monday is.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thank you.
So much.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, and we will see you next week. Bye.
A Better Humanhood production.